So the Rainy River Revision questions and answers. This is from the first part of the PowerPoint. It's three different PowerPoints. This is part one of the PowerPoint. The question, Tim feels like he is naive to a lot of information about the Vietnam War, as well as to the world. What are some things he names as examples that he does not understand? The Vietnam War was very confusing, so some things that Tim names that he does not understand are whether or not it was a civil war, so whether or not it was just people in Vietnam fighting themselves. He didn't understand the political or the philosophical reason for the war. He didn't understand who started the war and why. There are a number of
Mr.
Yes.
When you will download the vocabs meanings?
Today. I will upload it today.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So he didn't understand the political reason. He didn't understand the philosophical reason. He didn't understand all of the people that were talking about why this is a good war, or the people that were talking about why this is a bad war. It was a war against communism. He didn't really understand if it was that or what. So there was a lot of things happening that he just did not understand, that he names in these lines here in the story. Number two, Tim gives multiple reasons why he feels like he should not go to war. What are some of the reasons that he thinks to himself? So Tim feels that he is too good or too smart or too compassionate for war. He cannot imagine going to a foreign country and killing people he doesn't know or want to hurt, especially when he doesn't know the reason for the war. He felt like he was not a soldier. He was just a college student and a young man that was not fit or not ready to go to war. He doesn't understand the war. He doesn't know why people are fighting the war, so he doesn't want to go to this country to kill people that he doesn't know why they're there anyway. The next one, how does Tim feel about his job? Why did he spend a lot of time alone or isolated? Isolated is another word for alone. Tim does not like his job because it feels gross and disgusting. He works at a meat packing factory cleaning up the inside of dead animals. So it's not like a butcher. Like, he prepares the animal before it goes to the butcher. So he cleans out all of the insides and he has to clean it. And he always smells like dead animals and old blood, and it's disgusting. And he feels isolated and he feels alone. Because he always feels like he's dirty. He always feels like he's gross. So he would always try to take a shower to clean himself, but it would not get rid of the dead animal smell. It would always smell like blood or dead animal on him. Yes, the exam will be multiple choice. It will all be multiple choice, no short answer. So he felt like he was alone because he couldn't spend time with friends or have a date because he was always smelling like dead animals and blood because he didn't like his job. Number four, what are some things that Tim feared more than the war, and who were people he blamed and was mad? And who were the people he blamed for the war? Who was he mad at? So Tim, more than anything, was afraid of exile, or of being somebody that his society, his hometown, did not accept. The people that he knew, the people he grew up with, his family, his city, all of his schoolmates, everybody. He was afraid of leaving all of these people behind and just leaving them and losing their respect. And he was afraid to break the law. So his options were to go to war and fight and kill people in a war he doesn't understand, or to run away to Canada and lose all of the people that he knows, all of his family, all of his friends, his whole hometown, and lose all of them just to avoid the war. So Tim was mad at the older generation of people, so like his parents and the generation before him. He was mad at them for their old way of thinking. He felt pressure from everybody in town and from his parents who wanted to fight the war, who thought the war was good. And he felt that these people in his town would judge him and label him as a coward if he did not fight. So he hated them because they were also people that were not fighting, but even if they are the people who are not fighting, they would judge him, they would judge Tim for not fighting. So he didn't like these people. Number 5, what feeling did Tim get at work that made him decide to leave? So he was at work and he gets a sort of feeling, he feels something, and he says that he goes through many different emotions in a very short time. So he goes from anger to even more anger to confusion, and then he's scared, and then he's sad, and then he feels bad, and then he's angry again. So he goes through all of these emotions very quickly, and he feels like he's got like a disease in his stomach. He feels like he has something sick in his stomach, and it fills him with stress, and he just leaves, he runs away, he runs home. He goes home and he writes a little note to his parents that says, "Be back later, Tim." That's it, and then he just leaves. So number 6, how did Tim find the Tip Top Lodge? That's the name of the hotel that he stays at. And why did he stay there? So Tim was driving after he left his house without anywhere to go, and he was very scared. So he sees this lodge, and it's like right on the border between Canada, between where he is in Canada. So it's very close to the border. He wants to stay there because if he decides to run to Canada, it's very close. And he found it on accident when he was just driving while he was scared with nowhere to go. And then at the end of this section here, we are introduced to a new character. It's way down here. So we're introduced to a new character down here. So his name is Elroy Berdal. So the question, how does he feel about him and how does he describe him? So Tim likes this it's a very old man. He describes him as someone who's like over 80 years old. He's very skinny and he's mostly bald. He looks like a farmer. He wears very plain, very simple clothes. And he feels a very strong connection for the man. He meets him at the door of the hotel and he believes that this man saved his life, as he says, and he describes him as a very silent, watchful, and wise person. The man gives Tim, Elroy gives Tim what he needs. He provides him with a place to stay, and he takes care of him and helps him sort of figure out what's going on in his own head while Tim is trying to figure it out for himself. So this is from the second PowerPoint. Number 1, how do we know that Elroy is a clever old man? Tim believed that Elroy was clever because he could always, he felt like Elroy knew why Tim was there in the first place. So without even saying anything about himself, Tim didn't say anything to Elroy about who he is or why he's there, but Tim could tell that Elroy kind of already knew why he was there. And then they would play the game Scrabble, which is like a word game, and Elroy would always beat him, and would always win at the game. And then Elroy would give Tim some small pieces of advice. He would tell him these very short messages that made Tim think very deeply. So he would give him something to think about in just a few words. Number 2, what was happening to Tim that makes it obvious he was stressed out or unhappy? So Tim was having a difficult time with sleep. He would keep getting sick and vomit often, and he was unable to eat a lot of food. So he was constantly sweating, he was always stressed out, he was always vomiting, and he was unable to eat. Number 3, how do we know that Elroy was respectful of Tim's privacy? Elroy was very careful not to ask Tim about the reason he was at the lodge in this part of Minnesota. He would talk about everything else except why he was there. So Elroy was being very respectful because he was not completely just asking Tim, okay, why are you here? He kind of knew why Tim was there, but he gave Tim his privacy still. He didn't ask too many questions. He just said, he would let him talk and they would just have very casual conversations about the weather or whatever. But he did not ask Tim any personal questions. Number 4, after their discussion on the price, how do we know that Tim started to trust Elroy? So there was one point in the story where Tim is staying at this hotel. So Elroy is charging him, per night for staying at the hotel. So when it comes time to pay for this, while Tim is staying at this hotel, he is also working for Elroy, fixing up the rooms, fixing up the buildings, helping him with whatever he needs. So Tim is working for Elroy while he stays there. And it becomes obvious that Tim starts to trust Elroy when Tim starts telling Elroy about the job that he had and starts talking about himself. Yes, I posted these answers on the LMS. I'll show you in a moment. Tim was telling him, so Tim starts to tell Elroy about himself, about what his life was like, and he gave him details about what his job was like and how it made him feel. So Tim starts to open up to Elroy and starts to share his privacy with Elroy. So it's obvious he starts to trust him because he tells him about himself. Number 5, how much money was in the emergency fund and why did Elroy give it to Tim? So Elroy had given Tim 4 $50 bills, which is $200. And Elroy felt that Tim had earned this money because although Tim was staying at the hotel and should have been paying for his room, he was also working and helped Elroy with many chores or a lot of work. So Elroy decided, you know what, I owe you money for all of the help. So he gave him money. Also, he knew that Tim was in trouble, so he figured if he could help him in any way that he would. Then the last part, what was Elroy trying to do to Tim by taking him out in the water? So they take him, Elroy brings Tim on a boat out in the middle of the water. And Tim feels that Elroy was giving him what he wanted when he took him out on the boat of to the border of Canada. All Tim would have to do on the boat is jump off the boat and he could swim across to Canada. So Elroy was giving him this opportunity to run away. So Tim is running from the war in the first place. He's running from being drafted. He doesn't want to go to war. He's on the border of Canada. So Elroy now takes him to this place where all Tim needs to do is jump and swim and he can avoid the draft. He doesn't have to go to war. Number 2, how do you feel about the emotions Tim is going through while trying to jump? And can you relate to them and how? So Tim is standing on the side of this boat while Elroy is just fishing behind him and starts going through all of his emotions. So remember one of the first questions, Tim is going through all of these different emotions before he leaves work. So now he's going through all of these different emotions again, while he's trying to decide if he should jump or not. So Tim's emotions when he considered jumping were very intense. He doesn't know whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. He is scared, he's afraid to actually jump off. He doesn't want to leave his family. He's afraid of being labeled a coward. He's also afraid of going to war and fighting people and killing people. So he's very scared and he doesn't know what to do. He is in a quandary now. He doesn't know if he should go to war or avoid the war and run away. And these are all the emotions, and he starts crying to himself. The emotions become so intense, so strong, that he just stands on the boat and just starts crying quietly to himself. So he's going through a lot of issues. Number 3, Tim has a dream or a hallucination about being in this place, in this river between Canada and America. So he describes what he is seeing during this hallucination or this dream. It's really, really intense. It's also down here in the story, 450. So it's like right around here. Yeah, it's like this page here and this page here. It's really intense. It's fun to read. But he describes all of these different things when he's hallucinating or dreaming. He says that he sees people from his life and his hometown, like the people he went to school with, his family and his friends. all of the people from all of the businesses that he knows, because it's a very small town. He sees his parents. He sees some famous American presidents, politicians, political activists, some journalists, and some writers. He sees American pop culture characters and actors. These are all people that he's seen before, and then he sees people from the future. He sees people like dead soldiers that were killed and burned during the war, people that he killed. He sees his future wife. He sees his future children. He sees all these people that he hasn't met yet. So he's sort of having this dream about all of the possibilities of what can happen, what will happen, and what has not happened yet, while trying to decide if he should run away from the war or go back home and just go to the war. And then this last question, what final reason does Tim have to go to war? During his hallucination or his dream, Tim feels like everybody he saw, all of the people he saw before he jumped, were all looking at him and calling him a traitor or calling him a coward. He felt embarrassed. He felt like he would never be able to face anybody from his life ever again, like his family or his friends, and he felt like a coward running away. And what he was trying to do was a mistake. So he decided to return home and accept the draft notice. This